I keep our house clean. I take care of our kids. I do this, I do this. And none of that matters. None of that makes you feel loved. That entire slate is wiped clean if I don't perform this one activity for you. That's very insulting.
If you have ever said yes in a relationship to sex when every part of you wanted to say no, that's coercion. And the truth is, coercion is actually abuse. And it's rooted in this belief that men are just entitled to women's bodies. And it doesn't protect the relationship. It actually destroys the intimacy and it makes real connection impossible. Today, I am sitting down with Dr. Danielle Kramer, a sex therapist and clinical sexologist. And we're going to talk about sexual coercion, which is a really, horrible topic that needs to be talked about because too many women are experiencing it. So I'd love to turn this over to you and just have you kind of introduce yourself.
So my name is Dr. Danielle Kramer. I go by Danny. Thank you for having me. I'm a certified sex therapist and a board-certified clinical sexologist. And I do part-time clinical work, part-time research. So in research, I focus heavily on AFAB and women's healthcare. So things like reproductive justice, abortion care and access. And then in my clinical work, I focus on both individual and couples work. I do a lot of religious deconstruction, so a lot of purity culture deconstruction. And I do a lot of work on helping couples develop a healthy sex life and a healthy kind of sexual ethos that feels really good and authentic to them, which can be really difficult in the society that we're raised in to kind of develop a good, healthy sexual foundation.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I mean, there's so much to be said for where this all comes from and the beliefs that women hold and men hold and what we're taught and how that affects relationships that we end up in. I know I was not really prepared to be, nobody's prepared, but I wasn't prepared to be in a coercive relationship. And I didn't recognize it. When I was in this relationship, I'd experienced all kinds of abuse, but it wasn't until well after, maybe 18 months or so after I left, that I was like, oh my God. I also experienced sexual abuse. I was coerced and I was told that I was the problem, right? There was something wrong with me for not wanting to sleep with somebody who I was in a relationship with, right? I'm broken. And he wanted to go to a sex therapist. So sometimes I wonder, what would you have said, What do you tell couples when you are sitting with them, or tell women even when you're sitting with them who may not recognize it?
So often I have women come by themselves. That I think that would be the most common way that I see people. I often have women come and say, I wanted this to be couples therapy, but my partner wouldn't come. It's very common for the man to decline. Or as you said, the man will send the woman to therapy and say something is wrong with you. You need to go get fixed. Something is wrong with you. So you never make assumptions, right? You start with a blank slate and you just start asking questions and you explore that with curiosity. That's kind of the big thing in therapy. We don't judge and we explore with curiosity. We don't make any assumptions. So I have people, describe the sex that you're having right now. Tell me about the sex that you're having right now. Do you enjoy the sex that you're having right now? Which kind of sounds silly, but you would be shocked how many people are not enjoying the sex that they're having right now, but they are having sex, right? And then you talk to people about, tell me some of the barriers that you have to having sex. What comes up for you when somebody tries to initiate sex with you? How does that make you feel? How does it feel in your body? And then you start asking them, what does initiation of sex look like in your household? Who's most likely to initiate? What does that look like? How does that make you feel when that person does initiate? And that's when you start to see some evidence of coercion start to come out. And they'll say things like, well, my husband, he expects sex 2 to 3 times a week. And he keeps track. So if it's been a couple days, he'll be like, it's been 3 days. And so I know that if it's been 3 days, I can't say no the next day. Why can't you say no? What happens when you say no, right? And so you really have to dig in and explore that.
I don't know. I think I would have said that I could say no. I don't think I understood that I absolutely couldn't, because you can't say no, meaning what? He hits you? No, right? He just pouts, sulks, makes comments, tells you there's something wrong with you, threatens to cheat. I mean, the language around coercion, it's a much bigger spectrum than I ever realized, right? In anything from it's your duty, you have to, and sort of using obligation or blackmail, threats, this is why men cheat, or this is why men's suicide rates are so high, or other wives want to, or, so-and-so has sex with her husband. What's wrong with you? What do you think these men are thinking?
So I think men are something that I talk about often is we have to look at what our sex education looks like in this country, because that's kind of everyone's foundation. Let's be real. Most parents are not talking to their kids about sex. And if they are, it's like very bare bones stuff, right? It's like, this is how babies are made. And this is something that you'll do later in your life, but don't you dare do it now. And like, it's very, very, like I said, very bare bones and very like, we don't talk about consent often to our kids. Not that I see anyway. There's good studies that show that like most kids by the time they hit college don't know that much about consent. They may not know what like we call Fry's consent. We go based off of Fry's consent, which is freely given, reversible, informed, excited, and specific. Most of them have never heard of that, right? So in our country, we teach sex ed from a male pleasure focused standpoint. So we talk about male orgasms and male pleasure, but we don't ever talk about female pleasure. And we also talk about it from a standpoint of women being the sexual gatekeeper, which is part of purity culture. And that's also part of this male coercion is normal. So in our schools, in our public schools and in our private schools, we're generally teaching kids that sexual coercion from men is normal. That's a normal part of men's sexuality. Men are going to push your boundaries. They're going to try to convince you to do something you don't want to do. Boys will be boys, right? So it's your job as a woman to say no. It's your job as a woman to put up boundaries. It's your job as a woman to say, I don't want to do that. And he's going to push that. He's going to try to convince you. He's going to say things like, well, if you really loved me, that's sexual coercion. He's going to say things like, well, this is how men cheat on their girlfriends. That's sexual coercion. But we teach this as normal. We teach girls, boys are going to say these things to you and that's normal. But then boys also hear, well, I can sexually coerce women. I'm supposed to try it. Like it's the dominance thing, right? She's going to say no, but it's a game. And if I can get her to say yes, and then this carries over into marriages and we all act shocked. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that he's threatening to cheat on you. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that you feel like you have to have sex with your husband every 3 days, which comes from like a specific evangelical book. Not any kind of a real study, that 3 days idea. But then we can't act surprised because this is the sexual foundation from which our kids are working off of, right?
Yeah. It really makes so much sense when you put it like that, under that framework, because I'm not a man, I'm a woman. I know what I was taught and that they want it and that they're going to try to get it from you. That's so how I was raised. But if boys are hearing the same thing, then they're hearing, maybe inadvertently, maybe not, that that's expected of them to coerce, except this is where I find it kind of interesting because in the rare circumstances that I have regretfully found myself in a conversation with a man on this topic, they seem to feel like it's just persuasion. She said yes. What's the difference between persuasion and coercion?
So I kind of think of this as responsive desire. So if we think about like the dual control model of sexual desire, one of it is spontaneous desire. Like, oh, I want sex, right? And then the other one is responsive desire. You have to give me something to respond to, whether that's connection or some form of intimacy or some form of touch, right? Like cuddling on the couch or something like that. So you have to give me something to respond to in order for me to feel sexy, in order for me to like get into that sexy space with you. So for me, there's a difference between giving me something to respond to, which is noticing and paying attention to my consent. The goal at the end of responsive desire is your enthusiastic consent. And I, as your partner, am detached from the outcome. I don't have a predetermined outcome I'm trying to get us to. I'm just trying to get us to connection. I'm trying to get you to relax and to exist in this space with me. And if that leads to sexy time, which, yeah, of course I want, but your comfort and your yes means more to me than what I want. So I'm not focused on my needs. Persuasion is focused on my needs and I'm trying to get to my needs no matter how I get there, right? Giving you something to respond to is focusing on your needs. And it's saying, are you comfortable? How do you feel right now? Does this feel good to you? Did I start giving you a back massage and you're like, actually, I just don't want to be touched right now. Okay, no problem at all, right? So I back off. As soon as I notice that enthusiastic consent is not there, I back off or I check in with you and I say, how are you feeling? Do you still feel okay? Should we keep going or do you need me to pull back, right? Persuasions, I care about my needs and I'm trying to get to a predetermined goal. Responsive desire, meeting my partner in their responsive desire is, hey, let's connect and spend this time together. And I'm detached from the outcome. Wherever this goes, it goes. And I'm okay with that.
Oh, what a good example. And I can just hear the men Yeah, but if I do that, then we'll never have sex. I can just hear it.
So I hear that often. I hear men say like, well, if I did that, she'd never want to have sex with me. That's probably true in your relationship because you have set up a system of coercion. In order for me to say yes, I have to feel calm and comfortable and confident that my no will be respected and it will be okay. There will be no consequences. I'm not going to get silent treatment. I'm not going to get you pouting. I'm not going to get you guilt tripping me. I'm not going to get threats, whether explicit threats or covert threats, right? Like if I walk away and I'm like, well, this is why some husbands cheat. I'm not directly threatening you, but I am, right? It's an inexplicit threat. It's me saying, well, if this continues, I don't know, right? So if you have set up those conditions in your marriage, in your relationship, then yeah, that's going to take time and space to heal for both of you. It's going to take you to heal that entitlement and you to give her space. Because the other thing is, going back a bit, when we set up that sexuality of like women are gatekeepers and men are the pursuers, where is the space for my sexuality? Because in that framework, my sexuality only exists in response to his. I don't have my own sexuality, right? Men are the pursuers and I'm the gatekeeper. There's no space for my sexuality. So when you tell me, well, if I back off of all that and I do that, she's never going to have sex with me. That's probably going to be true for a while, right? Sometimes in healing, things have to get worse a little bit before they get better, but you need to give her space to have her own sexual response, her own sexual desire. You may not even know what that looks like because you've never given her space to express it. But with healing, with her starting to understand that this isn't about coercion, this is about sex that we're going to do together, not something you're going to do to me and I give to you. Sex isn't something done to women, it's something done with women.
I see this in the comment section so often of like this, men want sex and women have to give it or not give it, as you described, the gatekeeper. But they think that they're getting it from women. There's nothing about women's pleasure or women really participating. It's just like a thing that you do to a woman. So it really speaks to not seeing women as human and not seeing them as part of it. I hear a lot of men say things like, women don't like sex, which I think just, it bring up every feminist, sarcastic bone in my body of like, she doesn't like sex with you. Women do like sex. You've just identified the problem without even realizing it. It actually almost makes me laugh at this point in my life when men say that women don't like sex. I'm like, all women that you've experienced? Boy.
Tell me yourself.
You just said something. Yeah. Ooh, how embarrassing. I play with them online like that to make them feel bad a little bit because I don't know. I'm pro shaming coercive men. But deeper than this, there's a real entitlement that you keep talking about here, that they believe that they should have this. Like, why be in a relationship if you aren't getting regular sex? That's the point. But how are men destroying their own sex lives? Because that's what I'm hearing here. They're doing this to themselves.
They are. So when we use this language of like withholding sex, right? That reveals an entitlement mindset. So anytime someone says to me like, well, so-and-so's withholding sex or she's withholding sex, that is an entitlement mindset. And when you have an entitlement mindset, you cannot have pre-existing consent, right? Because I'm entitled to your body. Like often we'll hear men say like, well, sex is a need. It's not. No one died without it. Food is a need, right? Needs are things that your body needs to survive. Food, water, clothing, shelter, things like that, right? These are human needs. I will die without them. Or at least my health and everything will significantly deteriorate to the point of long-term, I will eventually die. Nobody has died without sex. And then I get the argument like, well, the human population will die off. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about macro level. We're talking about you in this relationship, right?
Yeah.
So when you don't leave space for her sexuality, right? When I'm entitled to sex with you, then that means that sex is something that you provide me as a duty, right? Like you have to provide this as a service in the relationship. Well, what do studies show us happens when we hold that mindset in a relationship? It shows us women's libidos tank because there's no space for them to have sexual expression. My only sexual expression is me performing a duty for you. We also find, which is really sad, when women themselves hold this mindset, when women themselves buy into the mindset, because that even matters too, that I owe you sex, we see more sexual pain. We see things like vaginismus, which is a physiological response that your body is having to being forced into having sex that you don't actually want to have, right? So do you want to have sex then when your libido is tanked, when there's no space for your sexual expression, and when you're having pain during sex because of this withholding and this entitlement mindset. No, women aren't going to want to have sex.
Of course, if you're not centered in it at all, why, like, what's the point? To men's point, it's for both people. So if the men are being centered and women are not part of it, or women's pleasure is not part of it, it's going to feel awful in addition to being coerced and not being able to say no. Something you kind of touched on, and I'm just thinking about, is how some of these coercive men demand that you finish. Like they are trying to center you, or it seems like they are in a like you have to finish kind of way. And I have spoken with so many women that are like, I just fake it because like he won't stop. It could go on for 45 minutes unless I just pretend. That I could see how a woman would think, well, he cares about my pleasure, but what's your take on that? Because I don't think he cares at all.
No, so I go back to that idea of like persuasion versus giving you something to respond to. In that moment, I care about my own needs and ego. It's not actually about you finding pleasure, and it's not about me finding what's pleasurable to you, right? If I really want to give you pleasure, then I'm going to be curious. I'm going to say, does it feel better here or here? Do you like this better here or here? Show me how you do it on yourself, right? Like if you can get yourself there, teach me how you do that. I care about your pleasure. But what's actually happening there is I care about my ego. I don't want you to finish because we're doing this together and this is a team effort. I want you to finish so I can feel good about myself. So I can walk out of this room being like, yeah, I'm the man. Like I got her to finish and she enjoyed it, right? But what's happening in women is what you described as like pressure scenario in their head. That is the opposite of orgasm. Orgasm is being in my body, feeling that tension and releasing and letting go. If I have pressure to meet a certain outcome, that is the opposite of where we're trying to go, right? Now I'm solution focused and I feel this pressure to do this for you. That's not going to get anybody to orgasm.
Yeah, definitely not. It's the ego piece is so clear, and I think nobody wants to participate if they have to perform this act, nor is it sexy if it's an obligation. Like I cannot tell you how many times it was like, but we're in a relationship. But I can't do this with anybody else, but you have to, but it's been a week, and always something. And it's like, I could never explain it. And it's interesting because the argument that I had, this is my experience, but I talk to so many women who share this, that it almost becomes a transaction. Like you're explaining as a person who's not a sex therapist, right? Just a woman who's trying to find the right words to explain to her husband why she doesn't feel so inclined. And it's like, maybe you say something like, I want to feel connected to you. And, you're mean to me sometimes and I just don't. And it's like, oh, so I have to be nice to you. Fine. Okay. Well, I've been nice to you for a week and it didn't result in sex. So what's the point? Like, this is just straight abuse, right? I mean, we're beyond sexual abuse now. We're talking emotional and psychological abuse. But what do you sort of say to that mindset, like to a woman who's experiencing a man that comes at her that way?
So it makes me think of the idea of like what you had said earlier about transactional relationships, right? I've been nice to you for a week. Where's my cookie? Where's my reward? Where's my outcome? Right? That's transactional. That's a direct give and take. That's I gave you something. Where's my prize? I paid my dues. Where's my paycheck? Right? Relationships should not exist. Healthy, good dynamics in relationships should not exist on transactions. Right? These should not be transactional. This should be an empathetic relationship where the reciprocity, right? I go back to relationship reciprocity. It should involve mutual support. It should come out of genuine care and concern. I genuinely care about you. I genuinely want you to be comfortable and happy. I'm not expecting anything in return. I trust, because we exist in a reciprocal relationship, I trust that you're going to give that mutual support back. I trust that when I need you, you're going to show up, right? That doesn't have to do with sex necessarily, but good, healthy sex comes out of this. Sex is a natural byproduct of a good, healthy relationship for most people. There are asexual people out there that exist and people exist on a spectrum, right? But when men are saying like, well, my partner doesn't want to have sex with me, that's a symptom of something going on in the relationship. When you're a sex therapist, one of the first things you learn is sex is usually not the problem. It's usually a symptom of something else going on in the relationship, because good, healthy sex for both parties is a natural outcome of a good, healthy relationship.
Which seems so obvious to me. Like, you really had to say that out loud, but I get it. And people don't necessarily see it that way. I don't think what you said is subjective at all. I think that you just stated a fact. And when you create this transactional, like, I did the dishes, so where's my sex? It's like, that's not what we mean. Or because you hear this sort of like, make her feel supported, and maybe she's doing too much around the house. Maybe so like take some of this off her plate. And then he's like, well, I just did the dishes and I mowed the lawn, so where's my sex? But I think, again, it's that framework of him seeing it as something that he's owed. And he created the transactional nature of that when what she's asking for is connection and emotion. And I know not all women need emotion to participate in sex, but you see that pretty commonly at least in relationships, right? Where women want to feel emotionally connected, but men kind of go back to like, it's the only way I feel loved. And, oh, so you get, this, I'm thinking what mine used to say was, so you get to feel loved. You need the emotional connection and all that. Well, I need sex. So I can't be nice to you without the sex. You have to give me the sex for me to be nice to you. And I'm like, what? I have to give you sex to earn human decency?
So the other thing I often say in response to that, right, is, so you've never felt love before until you were in this relationship. And then they're like, well, wait, what do you mean? So like from your parents, from your aunts, your grandparents, sisters, brothers, friends, you've never felt love before. And they're like, well, no, of course I have. Oh, so you were able to feel loved in those other relationships. So what is it about this relationship that sex is the only way you feel love? And the other thing is, that's very insulting for your wife or your female partner, right? They're like, wow, I cook us 2 meals a day. Wow, I do all these other things for you, right? I keep our house clean. I take care of our kids. I do this, I do this. And none of that matters. None of that makes you feel loved. That entire slate is wiped clean if I don't perform this one activity for you. That's very insulting.
Yeah, I completely agree. I actually remember his mother taught me how to fold his underwear in a way that she thought was just like this perfect little thing. And he saw his drawer that I had now folded the way that I was asked to by his mother. And he was like, oh my God, I feel so loved. And I actually remember that moment of being like, so you can feel loved without sex. I actually vividly remember that, like, oh, you just caught yourself in a lie. Proof that acts of service is also part of this, even though, speaking of acts of service, I really hate the book, The 5 Love Languages. I've done a podcast episode on that specifically because why is every man's love language physical touch? And why, when you question and go into the depths of that, it's sex. It's not intimacy or touching or cuddling or massage, it's sex. Even massage, right? When you said like getting a back rub, I was like, men only do that to get sex. They're like, I'll give you a massage. No, what I just heard is you are going to not give me a massage and we are going to have sex, which if she doesn't want that, or I think women just even might want the space to have a massage and maybe it leads to sex and maybe it doesn't. But if it's not, if you don't know that that's what he's really after, how do you even enjoy a massage that you know is going to lead to something that you're not in the mood for?
And that's that consent piece, right? Like that's part of that responsive desire thing is I have to be detached from the outcome. So I have had a couple people in therapy where when they're menstruating, they get really bad lower back pain, just awful cramps and stuff in the lower back, right? And their wonderful male partners will be like, let me rub your back. Turn around. Like we're sitting here watching TV, right? Turn around. Let me rub your lower back. Let me rub that for you. Like, does this feel good? Does it make it hurt more? Okay, like let's try this. Or like, do you want me to get some massage oil? And it is completely detached from sex. They just see their partner in pain and they want to make them more comfortable. And their female partner trusts he's not trying to get sex from me. He truly just sees me in pain and wants me to feel more comfortable. Do you think that when she's done menstruating, that's going to get you closer to sex or further away from sex? It's going to get you closer to sex. You're not doing that, to be clear, because that's transactional relationships. You're not doing that to get closer to sex. You're doing it because you genuinely care about your partner. So then when she's not menstruating, or sometimes even when she is, because like that doesn't stop us. When she's not menstruating, right? And he's like, do you want a sexy back rub? 2 things happen. 1, that's connected to care and concern, right? I know you do this for me because you love me, not necessarily because you're expecting an outcome. But 2, if I say yes to this back rub, I know I can say no to anything else that comes after that. I'm only saying yes to the back rub. And because I know that he'll take my no and be totally fine with it, I can say yes to this back rub. And if it leads to sexy time, great. But if it doesn't, we're both okay with that too, right? That leaves space for consent. And it also leaves space for my expression of sexuality.
Actually, I was about to say that I wish that men understood that, but can we actually talk about the men that absolutely understand everything we just said and just don't care? Because I feel like that's very common, that men are like, oh, blah, 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 you women talking with the consent and marriage is consent or a relationship is consent. This is ridiculous. And just sort of dismissing it all. Like I really have this belief that men fundamentally, I mean, not all men, but most men understand what we're saying and they don't care. I find that abusive men, because you may deal with men in your practice that sit down, whether it's part of a couple or individually, and they're like, I want to do better. But I'm talking about maybe the men online or the men that these women who are my audience are married to or in relationships with. It's like they just don't care because all they want is the sex. How they get it doesn't matter. So I don't know that they feel bad about coercion at all. And I think they would probably reject the idea that this is coercion and that you and I are just two bitter old feminists or something.
Yeah, I think so. Two prongs on that. And sometimes they're like intertwined, right? We'll say they're a Venn diagram. There's a lot of overlap, right? So on one hand, we have like weaponized incompetence, essentially. You've been told. Maybe your female partner has sent you like websites, things to read, podcasts to listen to, trying to get you to understand. Like maybe you didn't know before because you didn't have any good sex ed and you guys got married when you were like 23. Okay, fine. But the information is there if you wanted to seek it out, right? And if your female partner is telling you that there's a problem here, I literally don't know hardly any woman that has not tried to impart wisdom on a man, right? Like, here's some information. Please read it. Please learn, right? So there's weaponized incompetence happening for sure. They don't see it because they don't want to see it. It benefits them more to not see it. It takes too much work for me to see it. If I see it, I have to do work. I have to try to communicate with you. I have to respect your no, but your no may not meet my needs, right? And then we have the other side of men that like, yeah, you're right. There are some men that truly just don't know. We are raised in a patriarchal society. We are raised in a society that teaches that sex is something that men take and women give. And if the more you're raised in like purity culture and that kind of upbringing, it doesn't even have to be religious focus because we teach purity culture in public school education, right? So that's how sex ed is generally taught in schools, is from this abstinence-based standpoint. That is purity culture. So when we have that, we have men that truly grow up believing this mentality. And when you try to tell them like, no, you're not entitled to sex, they're super offended. They're like, what do you mean? What do you mean I'm not entitled? Like you said, a relationship is consent. And then you say like, well, what about women's bodily autonomy, right? Like we have to recognize that sex is different. Getting food, getting water, that doesn't require the use of someone else's body. Sex requires someone else's body. You're not entitled to someone else's body. And for some men, they have literally never heard that before in their entire lives. So I do think it's a Venn diagram. How much that overlaps depends on the person.
Yeah, which is so sad. You know, again, the women that I primarily speak to in my coaching practice is women who I'm telling you, their husbands would not care if they felt coerced, you know, and even, okay, so she didn't really want to, but whatever. I just want to say the quiet part out loud for women that are listening to this. Non-consensual sex has a name. There's a different word for that. What word would you use?
That's sexual assault.
Right? It's that simple. It's not, there's non-consensual sex isn't a thing because it sort of, I don't know, that waters down the messaging of like it's still sex. It's an assault. And the interesting thing is, I know for me, I didn't recognize that as an assault when it was happening. Like I said, I realized it probably 18 months after the relationship ended. And it dawned on me that the reason my body was like maybe shutting down isn't totally the right language, but like I was not interested. I would recoil at the thought. I would hear the door open because he would come home late at night. I would hear the door open and I would run up the stairs, throw myself into bed so that he thought I was already sleeping so that I didn't have to. Like that's the lengths I was going to. My body understood that it was a sexual assault, even though my brain didn't. I was shutting down and it was a normal human thing to not want to sleep with someone who is abusive to you, who doesn't respect your no, and who makes you feel like it's an obligation. Like obligation, ooh, you're obligated. Ooh, so sexy, right? Like, ooh, take my clothes off. It's crazy to me that men could see this any other way. And yet I can't help but circle back to, I don't think they care. This group of men who are abusive, I don't think that they care because they just want it. And if you are coerced, whatever you women want to label it, I don't know that that matters to them because in the end, if they get it, they get it. They're using your body. And as long as they get off, and even the men whose egos are involved and they want you to get off, but they don't really care. They just want to feel good. It's all about them. And it's really sad. But the women that are going through it, like recognizing it. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation because I think recognizing it, naming it, I want women to really feel seen in this and know that this is sadly common. Now, one thing I see a lot is men saying not getting sex is abuse because let's go back to what you were talking about with the withholding piece, which I hate the word withholding. You can't withhold sex. I will die on that hill. I sense that you agree. I hate that word. But I got a DM from a guy last week that said, I'm in a narcissistically abusive relationship. I take care of her. I do everything for her. And she won't give me sex. I could immediately tell by his language, give me sex. I'm like, I don't buy that you're the victim here. But talk to me about those men who feel they are victims of abuse and that their wives or girlfriends are withholding sex.
So you can't withhold something that somebody was never entitled to, right? You can't withhold something that somebody else was never entitled to. And I have to repeat that over and over and over again to women in therapy. And to your point, like we're saying abusive men, I want women to hear this and understand that we're not just talking about men that hit you. We're not just talking about men that scream things that like call you fat, call you ugly, whatever. We're talking about men that make you feel like you have to have duty sex. We're talking about men who give you the silent treatment, who are just like aloof and rude to you if you don't give it to them, right? Abuse doesn't have to be in your face screaming at you. It can be, like you said, an emotional manipulation, or it can be a very like psychologically quiet kind of abuse, right? But there's no idea of withholding because withholding reveals entitlement. You can't withhold something someone was not entitled to in the first place. So sexual access to another person's body is never a right, even within marriage. Even if you haven't had it for 6 months, even if you haven't had it for a year. If you're that unhappy, you can leave the relationship. If you truly, like to that man that sent you the message, if you truly believe that your wife or your girlfriend is a narcissistic abuser, pressuring her into having sex she doesn't want to have makes two kinds of abuse existing in the relationship then, right? Even if that's true, you're just adding abuse onto abuse. You can't control her. So let's just pretend in this scenario that that's true. You can leave the relationship. You can go get therapy yourself, but you being abusive in response to someone else's abuse is not the answer, right? That being said, what most men deem narcissistic abuse is usually her withholding sex. I pay the bills. I go to work. I do this. And in exchange, I deserve to get sex. Now we're right back to a transactional relationship. And when men talk like that, I want to be like, so is your wife a prostitute? And then they get offended, right? They're like, well, of course not. Well, you just described to me how you put money in and you expect to get sex out. That sounds like a prostitute.
Yeah. But then you and I could role play this practically. Do you know what I mean? Like, no, you don't understand. No, I do. I think you don't understand, right? Like they don't seem to, and again, I don't believe that they truly don't understand because when you start using analogies and you can kind of flip it on them and use a different example, they suddenly understand. And honestly, the most common one, if you get really snarky, and I don't even want to say this online, but when you talk about, let's say, sexual acts that straight men may not want to participate in, right? If you sort of say like, well, if I were to do something you don't like, what if it makes me happy? That's how I feel loved. He would totally be like, well, what the hell? No. Oh, you mean you're not okay if I just wake you up and put something in your body? You don't like that? Because men do that. Women, I have clients who are asleep and their husbands wake them up in the middle of the night doing something. Or the joke of like putting sleepy meds in her wine or whatever to make her fall asleep so that you can get away with something in the middle of the night because she won't consent. Like this is happening to too many women. And it's such a broad spectrum, but I know too many women that are feeling, especially religious women, right? Christian women who are dealing with this, like, I'm withholding, so something's wrong with me. And they feel trapped. They don't know how to get out of it. And they feel like they love their husband and there's something wrong with them, and they don't actually realize that he's abusive and that he's creating this, especially for the men that you're talking about, or that the group of women that he's not yelling at you, he's not hitting you, he's not calling you names, he's not doing anything other than this. That's still abuse. Coercion is always abuse.
Coercion, anything that undermines consent is coercion, and coercion is always abuse. And the very language of withholding sex assumes ownership over someone else's body, right? That very idea of withholding assumes that you have ownership over my body. You don't. Even in a marriage, you have bodily autonomy. You get to go to the doctor and make your own medical decisions, right? Generally, look, I get it. Women can't get hysterectomies. That aside, generally, you get to go to the doctor and make your own choices about your own body, right? That's bodily autonomy. You don't lose that just because you're in a relationship. And when we talk about how common this is, I want women listening to hear 20%. We think it's actually quite higher, right? Just like we know that we don't get full reports on sexual assault. A minimum of 20% of women are experiencing coercion in their relationship right now, not have at some point in their lifetime. 20% of women right now are in a relationship where they're experiencing sexual coercion. That means if you have 5 friends in a room with you, one of you is experiencing sexual coercion from a partner. It's extremely common.
Yeah. Because I mean, the women that I talk to feel broken and like they're failing. And going back to the religion piece, even like you should submit to your husband. And I know I have clients that also say like, I've said to him, if I wanted to and you didn't, are you telling me you would say yes? And men are always like, of course I would. Of course I would say yes. I don't think so. I don't agree, because men are taking it from the perspective that they would never not want it, which I think is also a whole separate topic, of course, but it feeds this idea that men always want it, which only leads men to possibly have issues in abuse as well. But it is what it is. It's brutal. It's really, really hard for so many people to really, come to terms with this. But all this to say, I want to take you to a little section of the podcast called Real Talk from the comment section. So I'm going to read you a couple of comments that people have left. Say people, you'll know who left them quickly. And I just want to see your reaction right before we wrap the episode. Well, this one's perfect, actually. Women weaponize sex all the time. Men wouldn't have to pressure you if you didn't withhold it in the first place.
You can't withhold something you're not entitled to, right?
Right?
That plain, right. Like that mentality of entitlement is why she doesn't want to have sex with you. Back to your point, like women's bodies know. If women listening to this podcast, like check in with your body. Right? When a man is pressuring you to have sex, your mouth might be saying like, yeah, okay, I guess. You feel it in your body. Your body feels that anxiety. I have women tell me like my body feels like I'm vibrating with anxiety and I just hate it. I can't even stand him touching me, but I have to go through with it, right? You can't withhold something that somebody is not entitled to. So you can't weaponize sex because you're not entitled to sex in the first place. And let's just, again, we're going to play this game, right? So you're in a relationship with your partner and she's refusing to have sex with you. Let's call it like withholding. So as a therapist, if I have you guys in that therapy room, I'm digging into that. What's making you move away from sex with him? Where are your barriers to sex? It's not in a, why aren't you doing this judgmental kind of way. It's in a, what's going on for you? And if men did that, if men explored that with curiosity instead of shame and blame and you owe me this, hey babe, what's going on with you? Are you extra stressed at work right now? Or like sometimes women I have a lot of women that are perimenopausal, right? So they're having hormone changes and fluctuation. Their vaginal tissue is getting atrophied. So sex is actually becoming painful for them now. And it never was before. And they don't know how to tell somebody and they don't know how to talk to their male partners about it. But they also don't want to continue having painful sex. But imagine if you explored that with curiosity with your partner. Hey babe, we used to have like really great sex and I'm not judging you. I'm not blaming you. I'm just wondering what's going on with you. I'm seeing a shift. Can we talk about it? Give her space, but they don't. The more you push and push, the further and further she moves away, right?
Yeah.
Explore that with curiosity then, rather than shame and blame.
Men need to care. Yeah. The curiosity piece is so there instead of the frustration, or you could marry those two and be frustrated and curious, but the frustration will come through much more. So people need to take a step back. Here's the final comment, which just it irks me so much. So now every time a man wants sex and a woman isn't in the mood, he's an abuser. Give me a break.
Consent. You are allowed to approach your partner. So this is what I call the invitation. There's a difference. Invitation is that responsive desire. I want to give you something to respond to. There's a difference between pressure and creating an invitation. Are you pressuring them to get to your end goal and you care about only your needs? Or are you creating an invitation? I'm inviting you to enter this space with me. I'm inviting you for some physical touch that is non-sexual, to cuddle on the couch, to have a conversation, an in-depth, connective conversation about how your day went or what's going on with you. That connection can lead to sex, right? And the other part of this that I often hear from men is like, well, men get to feel rejected. Like, what? I'm not allowed to feel disappointed. You're allowed to feel disappointed. Disappointment is a valid human emotion. What you are not allowed to do is make that disappointment your partner's problem and use that as a coercive tactic. So no, like my partner approaches me for sex sometimes and I'm like, babe, I just can't. I'm not, I was just on my period. I don't feel good. My stomach hurts. I'm not in the mood or whatever. Or I might say like, I'm not in the mood right now, but like, would you mind giving me a back rub? Like my hips are really hurting. Can you give me a back rub? And like, maybe we'll see where it goes. Sometimes it goes there, sometimes it doesn't, right? But that's an invitation. That is different than pressuring. If you're pressuring and trying to coerce your partner, yeah, that's abuse. If you're creating an invitation that has no attachments, you can say no at any time. You can reverse your yes, right? Then no, that's not abusive.
Yeah. I wish it's not that hard, man. If you want to understand this, it's right here. The information is very clear, but I want women to really know that you're not withholding, you're not being abusive, you are being abused. If any of this is happening to you, if you feel like you can't say no, you are in an abusive relationship. And you may need to see a therapist, a sex therapist. But the truth is, I will always say this, abusive men are not fixed in therapy because there's a lot of entitlement and things that they need to address within themselves that is not for you to fix. But all that to say, where can we find you on social media? I want people to find your content.
So on social media, on TikTok and Instagram, I'm in bed with Danielle. And if you want therapy services, you can check out my website. It's inbedwithdanielle.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here and having this conversation with me.
Thank you.